Chapter 4472. Marriage? Ren Jianying intended to marry the crown prince? That woman. Her ambition was so big, would she be willing to marry a man? One must know that once she chose the royal family to marry, no matter how powerful she was, the Ren family would become the royal family's accessory. Based on Ren Jianying's character, how could she accept such a thing? Could it be Ren Jianying still had the intention to let Ren Jiaming and Gong Xiazhu get married? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Does Ren Jiaming know about this? Yes. Gu Yun nodded, because he knows he has been staying in the Gu residence and didn't go anywhere else. Yiqing Luo smiled. Looks like he understands his current predicament. As they were talking, they arrived at Ren Jiaming's courtyard. Yiqing Luo just walked in. She saw a figure pouncing over, eldest miss. Eldest miss. That person had not reached Yiqing Luo, but he was sent flying by Yiqing Luo's sleeve. Ren Jiaming touched his painful butt and climbed up from the ground with an exaggerated expression. Eldest miss, we haven't met for such a long time, can't you be gentler to me? He sucked in a breath of cold air in pain. As he walked towards Yiqing Luo, his mouth kept nagging. Just when he was halfway there, his eyes suddenly lit up. Eldest miss, your profound grade has recovered. Earlier, Yiqing Luo's sleeve was swung over. The air was filled with layers of ripples. Yiqing Luo walked straight into the courtyard. Didn't you want to see me? Say it quickly. Ren Jiaming followed behind. Eldest miss, how did you recover your profound grade? Can you tell me? I also want to recover my profound grade. Yiqing Luo sat on the stone bench. Go to Xianxia Ridge and you will naturally recover. But, from what I see, if you go there you might die. Ren Jiaming? Not might, it's definitely. Stop the nonsense, tell me what's the matter. Yiqing Luo didn't give him a chance to show off. Ren Jiaming looked at Yiqing Luo with a resentful look and sat on the stone bench opposite her. As a friend, I'm worried about you, alright? Yiqing Luo shot a glance at him. These words, even if you use it to deceive others, probably no one would believe you. Ren Jiaming immediately howled. Woman, why are you so cold-blooded? I was worried for you for so long. Yiqing Luo, forget it, she should just leave. Even though a series of events had happened and he had experienced several life and death situations, he was still calm. He could still be so optimistic. He didn't feel any shadow in his heart at all. He must be a weirdo. Eldest young miss, eldest young miss. Alright, I'll speak properly. Ren Jiaming immediately stood up and chased after Yiqing Luo, blocking her path. Yiqing Luo took a look at him and sat down once again. Ren Jiaming moved to her side and sat down. As he carefully observed her expression, he said, I just want to ask, when do you plan to help me save that person? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Are you sure that person can help you? I'm sure. Ren Jiaming adjusted his sitting posture and his expression became stern. The reason why elder sister wanted to take me away from the Gu residence several times was because she wanted to find out the whereabouts of that person from me. This is enough to show that elder sister is afraid of that person. Ren Jianying is nothing much to make her afraid. Is very normal. Yiqing Luo touched her chin. Ren Jiaming pursed his lips and suddenly placed both his hands on the stone table as he raised his head solemnly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4473. What if I say that, when I left the Gu residence 2 days ago and was captured by Big Sister, I saw people from the Palace of Darkness beside Big Sister. Gloomy palace, Yiqing Luo's eyelids twitched. Are you sure? I'm sure. Ren Jiaming nodded with certainty. Moreover, as I said before, the person who is related to Big Sister is from the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo had guessed right from the start. Ren Jianying should be working with the Palace of Darkness. She raised her eyebrows. How did you know about my relationship with the Palace of Darkness? I don't know about the grudges between you and the Palace of Darkness, but I know that your purpose in coming to the Heaven Realm is related to the Palace of Darkness. Ren Jiaming explained. Ever since the Palace of Tenebrous Shadows spread the news that you have the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade in your body and the Divine Emperor's tomb, I roughly knew that there was a story between you and the Palace of Tenebrous Shadows. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes thoughtfully. Ren Jiaming continued, Big Sis is very anxious to find the person I want you to save. It seems that it is also the intention of the Dark Palace. If you save that person, not only will you help me but you will also deal with the Dark Palace. This reason can convince me. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. I can promise you that as long as you save that person he will definitely help you deal with the Palace of Darkness. I don't want the Ren family to be destroyed by Big Sis. Ren Jiaming was still trying to persuade him. However, at this point, he was first stunned as he stared blankly at Yiqing Luo. After some time, he finally reacted to the meaning of those 8 words which Yiqing Luo said earlier. He jumped up excitedly. You agree? Yes. Yiqing Luo replied. Ren Jiaming's excitement was evident in his words. Eldest miss, I'm really grateful to you. You're the savior of the Ren family. Don't thank me so early, I might not be able to save him. Yiqing Luo looked at Ren Jiaming carefully. It was certain that Ren Jiaming's words were from the bottom of his heart. In the end, both of them discussed that after Dmo Xian returned, they would follow Ren Jiaming to save the person he mentioned. Dmo Xian was mentioned. Ren Jiaming looked a little down. After hesitating for a long time, he finally asked, You and the Overlord, really? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as her brows rose. Feel that I'm not worthy of him? No. Ren Jiaming hurriedly shook his head and immediately looked down. I'm just a little surprised. I've been wondering what kind of man would be able to take in a woman like you. I didn't expect it would be the Overlord. Perhaps it's because he's Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo seemed to have thought of Dmo Xian as her eyes were filled with smiles. Ren Jiaming was stunned for a moment before he chuckled. That was right, because it was Di Zun. He didn't even dare to start this emotional battle, and it was already over. He could not help but laugh. Fortunately, he had concealed his true feelings very well. Otherwise, he didn't even have the chance to make Yiqing Luo help him anymore. Wait here for the news, I'll make a move first. Yiqing Luo waved her hand and stood up. He had only taken a few steps. Ren Jiaming suddenly called out to her, Eldest Mississippi. Yiqing Luo halted her footsteps. The rumors about the Palace of Seclusion. Is it true? Ren Jiaming's question was filled with hesitation. Yiqing Luo turned around as her long and narrow eyes curved into a smile which didn't look like a smile. Do you believe it? Ren Jiaming didn't know how to reply for a moment. He remained silent for a moment before he opened his mouth. I always feel that. As long as it's you, no matter what is impossible, I feel that there will be a miracle. End of this chapter. Chapter 4474. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly. Her long and narrow eyes rippled with a faint glow. It's true. 3 words were clearly spat out from her lips. Ren Jiaming was stunned. It was until the young lady continued to walk forward when he regained his senses. Aren't you afraid that I have ulterior motives towards you? Yiqing Luo's footsteps didn't stop this time. She continued to walk forward. But her voice was clearly transmitted into his ears. Although, you're not very reliable, but I don't believe you. Believe? Ren Jiaming's heart felt as though something had exploded. He stared blankly at Yiqing Luo's departing figure. Agitation and indescribable emotions filled his heart. After leaving Ren Jiaming's courtyard, Yiqing Luo then asked Gu Yun to bring her to the Gu residence's warehouse, since she wanted to save someone. Then she had to go take a look at what medicinal herbs were in the Gu residence's warehouse. When Gu Yun brought them to the warehouse, Gu Yun's eyes widened. Outside the warehouse, there was actually an orderly team of guards guarding. Gu Yun went up and said something to that team of guards. Then she returned to Yiqing Luo's side. Eldest miss, after entering the warehouse, I need you to show them the Bone Lord's token. Yiqing Luo took out the token and threw it to that team of guards. The solemn and serious guards instantly went crazy. This was the token which represented the master of the Gu residence. Even if he didn't treat it as a treasure, shouldn't he treat it with respect? How could he throw it away just like that? He caught the token in a flurry. The guard leader couldn't help but check the token carefully before he believed that the token was real. Yiqing Luo took back the token and entered the warehouse alone. She tossed the token in her hand and her fingertips rubbed the top 2 times. Until now, she still didn't understand the reason why Blood-Bone Barbaric King passed the token to her. And that sentence which he asked Gu Yun to pass to her, what did it mean? What was called? She wanted to ask him the answer. Could she find the answer from this token? How would he know what she wanted to ask? A token, how was it going to answer her question? She was really annoyed with this kind of behavior, not being able to say it out directly. Yiqing Luo stuffed the token into the profound phoenix ring and inserted it into the warehouse. The warehouse of the Gu residence was indeed a place that required a group of guards to guard. Even though she was used to seeing rare treasures, she still couldn't help but click her tongue. There were countless rare treasures. As if they were free, they filled up the entire space. Yiqing Luo's goal was to head directly towards the medicinal ingredients section. When she saw those medicinal herbs, Yiqing Luo had the impulse to ransack this place clean. She saw many rare medicinal herbs that she had never seen before in the 100 refining pills. Just like those medicinal herbs that only appeared once every 1,000 years, there was a huge pile of them. What a nouveau riche. Yiqing Luo resisted the urge to stretch out her hand and slowly looked over. The more he looked, the more his blood boiled. They couldn't wait to compare all the medicinal herbs they knew with these medicinal herbs and study them. If only Master Ghost Doctor was here. He could probably stay here for a few years before he was willing to leave the warehouse. He was watching along the way. For a moment he did not notice his feet. A protruding object bumped into her foot. Yiqing Luo staggered as she fell forward. Her reaction was swift as she steadied herself, avoiding the consequence of falling flat on her face. If she fell. Chapter 4475. Yiqing Luo turned her head back to see what had tripped her. She lowered her head to take a look. It was a wooden box. It looked old and covered with dust. Yiqing Luo leaned over. Although there were many rare treasures in the Gu residence's warehouse, so much that it made one dazzled. But every single item was neatly placed. Why would there be a wooden box in this medicinal herb area? But something that would appear in the Gu residence's warehouse. It was definitely a treasure. Yiqing Luo lifted her leg and gave it a kick. She didn't hear any sound from inside. Yiqing Luo didn't smell any strange smell from the box. She tentatively stretched out her hand and poked the wooden box. After confirming that there were no hidden weapons in the wooden box, she then moved the wooden box in front of her. She raised her palm and the profound wave rippled, blowing away the thick layer of dust on top of the wooden box. The rectangular wooden box had an extremely complicated and ceremonial totem on top, winding around the entire box. Yiqing Luo's fingertip rubbed on the totem. If she didn't see it wrongly, these totems seemed to be similar to the totems on the murals of the Divine Emperor that she had seen before, but they were different in approach. But if she looked closely, it wasn't similar at all. There was a kind of imitation feeling. Yiqing Luo picked up the wooden box and sized it up. There was no lock on the wooden box. But she couldn't open it no matter what. Strange. Yiqing Luo turned the wooden box over and over, checking it thoroughly. She couldn't find a way to open the box. Yiqing Luo might as well throw the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring. Forget it, bring it out first and ask Xian when he returns. She had just kept the wooden box. Just as she was about to get up, out of the corner of his eye, he was suddenly blinded by a bright light from a certain spot. That was the direction where she had tripped over the wooden box and almost fell. If she had really fallen onto the ground, she might have discovered. From that corner, a faint and bright light shone out. Light? In the warehouse, every area was illuminated by luminous pearls. Coincidentally, the luminous pearls in the medicinal herb area were placed closer to the front. The position where Yiqing Luo was standing now, the light wasn't that bright. Because of that, the light in the corner was slightly more obvious. Yiqing Luo raised her brows slightly. Could it be that someone wanted to dig a tunnel and steal something from the warehouse? No. If there really was something, the group of guards outside the door would have noticed it immediately. Yiqing Luo thought for a moment and walked towards the direction of the light. Just as he approached, she furrowed her brows. The light came from a hole about the size of a fingertip in the corner of the wall. And when she just got close, from the entrance of the cave, he felt it was an extremely weak response. *CK was Qian. This feeling made Yiqing Luo go into a daze. After that guy was thrown out by Dmo Xin last night, he didn't return to her pet space. It's just a bird. Where did it go to wander? Yiqing Luo leaned towards the entrance of the cave and looked over against the light. On the other side of the cave, the candlelight flickered and it was a little dim. A slender figure was elongated under the flickering candlelight. Swaying, he walked towards a certain place step by step. The feeling of the shadow staggering made Yiqing Luo feel a little strange. Following the footsteps of that figure, the candlelight illuminated the surroundings. Yiqing Luo saw it clearly. That was a treacherous and eerie ancestral hall. Countless tablets, under the illumination of the candlelight, appeared extremely treacherous. Bone Residence Ancestral Hall? Yiqing Luo raised her brows in interest. Bone Lord? Was really someone from the Heaven Realm? Chapter 4476. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many tablets in the Gu Residence's Ancestral Hall. But that figure, who was he? Why did he appear in the Gu Residence's Ancestral Hall? And Qian, that bastard, why was he in the Gu Residence's Ancestral Hall? Yiqing Luo's gaze swept across the surroundings but didn't see any trace of Qian. She frowned and used her consciousness to call out to Qian. Both her divine sense was actually blocked by a barrier. She couldn't communicate with Qi Yan at all. This kind of situation, Qi Yan must have done it on purpose to cut off the spiritual link between them. What on earth was he trying to do? Yiqing Luo searched around. She didn't find any place from the warehouse to the ancestral hall. She couldn't possibly break through this place, right? She probably hadn't reached the ancestral hall yet. She would be taken away by the team of guards outside. Moreover, there were so many rare treasures here. Break through the warehouse. These precious medicinal herbs would be lost. Yiqing Luo decided to leave the warehouse and find Gu Yun to understand more before heading to the ancestral hall openly. Just as she was about to leave, coincidentally, the figure in the ancestral hall slowly turned around. A strange and horrifying face appeared in Yiqing Luo's pupils. The candle flame flickered, contrasting with the curved black blood on that face. She could even vaguely see the eerie white bones with black qi. That face. It couldn't be called a face anymore. Bai Mei. That face was exactly the Bai Mei who didn't have any young lady's skin on. Didn't she throw Bai Mei into the room guarded by the Gu residence's secret guards? She even specially placed the jade pendant which had Bai Su's consciousness in the room, so that the two sisters could have a good talk. How did Bai Mei appear here? Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly thumped. Bai Mei would absolutely not take such a big risk and run to the Gu residence's ancestral hall for no reason. Especially she didn't even bother to conceal her own face. To Bai Mei, appearance was everything she insisted on. Yiqing Luo dismissed the idea of letting Gu Yun lead her to the Gu residence's ancestral hall. If she swaggered over, it would only attract Bai Mei's attention. She wanted to see what Bai Mei was trying to do. The ancestral hall wasn't big. Yiqing Luo could see Bai Mei's every move clearly from this hole. Bai Mei's steps were obviously very unsteady. However, he still forced himself to walk around the ancestral hall. It seemed to be searching for something. He walked around the ancestral hall and searched around it. Bai Mei seemed to be a little impatient. That terrifying face of his was distorted. He quickened his pace. She hurriedly walked around the ancestral hall once more. Even the spirit tablets on the table were carefully examined. Finally, he bent down and crawled under the table where the memorial tablets and offerings were placed. Again there was nothing. She angrily crawled out from under the table. He did not care about the dust on his clothes. With a twisted face, he bared his teeth and glared angrily as he searched the surroundings once more. His movements became much more violent. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she was rather curious. What was Bai Mei looking for in the Gu residence's ancestral hall? Bai Mei could be considered a member of the Palace of Darkness now. Her current actions should be a mission issued by the Palace of Darkness. Only the Palace of Darkness could intervene to help. Bai Mei, who was already at Heaven's Boundaries Ridge, surrounded by various powerhouses and was on the verge of death, was able to avoid the Gu residence's secret guards and escape from the room. Chapter 4477. Yu Palace wanted Bai Mei to search for something in the Gu residence's ancestral hall. Yiqing Luo stared at it for a while longer. After Bai Mei searched a few rounds, her emotions became more and more irritable. But she didn't give up as she continued searching in the ancestral hall. Where on earth is this damn thing? Bai Mei clenched her teeth and spat out the words. She clenched her fist and slammed it on the ground. She didn't know what she had punched. She cried out in pain as she immediately hugged her own hand and stood up abruptly, raising her hand in front of her eyes to check. But her actions were too rough and swift. The moment she stood up, she suddenly knocked against the cabinet by the side. The memorial tablets on the table immediately swayed and fell to the ground with a pitter-patter. The sound of things crashing and falling was extremely clear in the quiet ancestral hall. Who is it? There's a sound from the ancestral hall. Let's go over and take a look. Outside the warehouse, Yiqing Luo could faintly hear the anxious voice of the guards. Bai Mei, who was in the ancestral hall, naturally heard these words. Her eyes sunk. Under the flickering candlelight, that face became even more twisted and terrifying. She quickly stood up and wanted to escape from the ancestral hall. But the next moment, in that fallen memorial tablet, a faintly discernible glow flickered. Even though it was separated by a wall, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel a burst of profound wave coming from the memorial tablet. Bai Mei apparently sensed this as well. There was an obvious change in her gaze. She suddenly grinned as her eyes revealed a greedy desire. Finally found it. Bai Mei totally disregarded the fact that there were guards rushing over. She speedily dashed towards the direction of that faint glow. Could that be the thing that Bai Mei was looking for? She must not let her get her way. Yiqing Luo's feet moved as she immediately dashed out of the warehouse. The guards outside the door had yet to speak to Yiqing Luo. They saw Yiqing Luo's figure was like lightning as she dashed towards the other end of the warehouse. But, which was the instance when Yiqing Luo dashed out of the warehouse? In the dim ancestral hall. A fiery red little figure dashed out speedily. Just as Bai Mei was about to come into contact with that dim light, the raging flames that were mixed with boundless profound energy swept in front of Bai Mei. She blocked Bai Mei's way. And the remaining power of the raging flames was shocking. The memorial tablets on the table fell to the ground. Get lost, Bai Mei shouted in a hoarse voice. She glared at the palm-sized bird that was spreading its wings and bared her fangs. Qi Yan sneered, "You dare to do little things behind the master of this sacred beast? This sacred beast will burn you." It flapped its wings fiercely. The hurricane swept over. When he arrived in front of Bai Mei, the hurricane suddenly turned into two fire dragons. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws at Bai Mei. In an instant, Bai Mei's soft black hair curled up from the heat of the raging flames. Bai Mei's face contorted when she smelled the burning smell. She grabbed at her hair with both hands. After feeling the burnt roots of the hair, his entire face was filled with a strong murderous aura. Bang! Bai Mei's palm wind surged as a thick black qi filled the entire space. Qi Yin swiftly evaded it. As the phoenix feathers moved, they flickered with a colorful fiery light. After it was thrown out by the overlord, it saw Bai Mei sneakily circling around the Gu residence. It had been following Bai Mei. Chapter 4478. Indeed, this woman was trying to do something behind Yiqing Luo's back. Qi Yin flapped its wings and flew upwards. It wanted to settle this woman with its own power. Then it would bring this woman back and let the overlord know how powerful it was. Humph, let's see when he casually throws it. How would its master beat him up? Just as it was thinking about this, a gust of black yin qi, like a dense spider web, started to wrap around everything in its surroundings. Qi Yan's little body was still in the midst of its complacent imagination when it suddenly crashed into the yin qi. In an instant, a hole was corroded on the phoenix feathers which were like flowing light. Qi Yan cried out in pain. It spat out a flame from its mouth. It tried to disperse all the yin qi around it. Unfortunately, the layers of yin energy simply couldn't burn through the barrier at all. Instead, it went against the flame which it spat out and wrapped around it. It was like a bloody mouth which was opened wide. Scarlet flame's scarlet eyes widened, and a mournful cry came from its sharp mouth. What kind of ghostly yin qi was this? It was actually so strange. Its flame actually had no way to disperse or purify this ball of yin qi. One must know that its flame was able to cleanse any darkness in the world. But the yin qi which was released from Bai Mei's body was totally useless. How was this possible? Bai Mei's body was absolutely filled with yin qi, absolutely filled with the darkness of this world. Why did its flame have no effect on Bai Mei? Stinky bird, just based on you and you want to stop me? Bai Mei's horrifying face twisted as she sneered. Her 5 fingers turned into a sharp blade which was wrapped by the yin qi, sharp and filled with a chilling murderous aura, directly grabbing towards Qi Yan. Qi Yan was entangled by the layers of yin qi and couldn't move at all. It endured the pain of its wings being corroded by the yin qi and flapped its wings with all its might. Qi Yan was in so much pain that its phoenix feathers stood erect. Seeing the sharp yin qi coming straight at him, he felt a chill run down his spine. Qi Yan was so anxious that its phoenix feathers fluttered violently as it floated to the ground. It was one of the 4 holy beasts, the holy beast vermilion bird, yet it was about to die at the hands of a lowly human. It shouldn't have tried to be brave. He shouldn't have acted on his own before his strength had returned to its peak. Master, hurry up and save your bird. If you don't save the bird, you won't have a bird anymore. Qi Yan kept howling in his heart. He had not expected that before he died, he wasn't thinking about his 3 brothers, but Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei. It was a slightly cold voice that emitted a chilling intent. In this quiet ancestral hall, it was treacherous and sinister. After that, the door to the ancestral hall was suddenly kicked open. In front of Bai Mei's eyes, an afterimage that looked like a sunset flashed past. He felt a dull pain in his chest as he was sent flying by a powerful force. The young girl was dressed in a fiery red robe, and she exuded a noble and lofty aura. Bai Mei felt a sharp pain in her chest. She looked at the newcomer in disbelief. His gaze collided with the girl's cold and disdainful gaze. She only felt that she had been despised by Yiqing Luo. How dare you touch my beast? The young girl's pink lips curled up coldly as her smile was like a blooming poppy. Immediately after, she didn't look at Bai Mei. Her body turned slightly. She stretched out both her hands towards Qian, who was entangled by the yin qi. Wherever her hand went. Chapter 4479. Just like the purification function. She rescued Qian from the dense evil qi. Her fingers touched the place where Qian was corroded by the evil qi. There was a hint of coldness in her eyes. There was a bit of fierceness and sharpness in it. She held Qian in her arms. Her cold and charming eyes were slightly raised, and her gaze fell on Bai Mei. For eyes met. Her pink lips curled up slightly, her tone was cold, but there was an invisible noble elegance. Bai Mei, since you want to die then, I will fulfill your wish. Her tone, and the expression between her eyebrows were completely like looking down at Bai Mei. This kind of cognition made Bai Mei's heart give birth to a deep sense of shame and annoyance. Especially looking at Yiqing Luo's high and mighty attitude, completely stepping on her expression. She couldn't wait to tear Yiqing Luo into pieces. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes and looked at the curled-up ball in her arms, completely without the arrogant look in the past. The coldness in her eyes was even worse. Cold to the bone, even the aura around her was cold to the extreme. Under this gloomy ancestral hall, as if there was a gust of cold wind blowing. But Qian in her arms seemed to not feel this bone-chilling coldness at all. Like finally hiding in a safe place that could make it feel at ease. The whole beast was relaxed. Bai Mei, for the sake of my sister, I have let you off too many times. Yiqing Luo caressed Qian's phoenix feathers. Her fingertips were still stained with a few strands of fluff that fell from Qian's body. Bai Mei's eyes seemed to be stained with poison. Don't be so hypocritical after all, you are just deliberately forcing yourself in front of the overlord, pretending to be good and kind. Bai Mei didn't appreciate it at all. In her heart, Yiqing Luo was completely because Diamo Xian couldn't bear to let her die, so it was not easy to kill her. Yiqing Luo gave a sound and laughed in a low voice. In the laughter, it was treacherous and frightening. I didn't expect that in your eyes, I am a beautiful and kind woman, I am so embarrassed. As she spoke, her fingertips purified all the yin qi on Qian's body. Then she put Qian back into the pet space. After doing this, Yiqing Luo then swung her hand and curled her thin lips frivolously. Now tell me, how do you want to die? Do you really think that you can kill me? Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly. Her terrifying face was contorted with wrinkles. The blackened flesh and blood were squeezed together in layers. It looked very disgusting. Yiqing Luo's eyes revealed a look of disgust as she shot a glance towards the tightly shut main door of the ancestral hall. Don't worry before we die, this door will not be opened and those guards will not come in to disturb us. We can slowly play. The disgust in the young girl's eyes deeply pierced Bai Mei's heart. How could she not tell that Yiqing Luo was disgusted with her face? If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo, if it wasn't for that bitch, how could her face become like this? That slut actually dared to dislike her. She also wanted to let that slut have a taste of being disfigured. Bai Mei's body and mind were already twisted as the gaze she shot at Yiqing Luo was filled with intense hatred. If the door of the ancestral hall was not open, then so be it. Yiqing Luo thought that she wanted to escape from the main entrance? Did she really think that she was an idiot? Leave from the main entrance. The minute she left, wouldn't she be caught by the Gu residence's secret guards? Ah, idiot. Bai Mei clenched her fists tightly as her peripheral vision shot a glance towards the ancestral hall's cabinet. Following that, she leapt upwards. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4480. A sinister black qi shot out from Bai Mei's palm. The dense profound glow merged with the sinister qi. Following that, a dense and horrifying attack was unleashed directly towards Yiqing Luo's face. Huff huff huff, the frenzied profound glow slapped everything around it. The only table in the ancestral hall also made a crashing sound from the impact. The spirit tablets which had fallen onto the ground were also knocked against each other. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she speedily avoided Bai Mei's attack. The glower flame fan on her fingertips opened up as a burst of profound wave collided with Bai Mei's attack. But Bai Mei had no intention to continue fighting with Yiqing Luo. After she had unleashed a powerful offensive, she suddenly felt a chill down her spine. She speedily turned around and dashed towards the table where the spirit tablets were placed. On the table, the faint profound glow was still faintly flickering. Bai Mei took a few steps forward and dashed over. Her hand pressed on that piece of table. Feeling the faint glow inside and the profound qi which was emitted, she couldn't help but twitched her lips as she looked towards the front where the profound wave was surging. Yiqing Luo, do you really think that you can make me stay? Tiske. Wait till I get my hands on this thing, I will kill you, kill you. She laughed maniacally as her hand had already stretched out towards that faint glow. Just at this moment. Suddenly, a slender hand was placed on Bai Mei's wrist. Aren't you hooting about how powerful you are? Why are you trying to escape? Not knowing when, the young lady had already broken through that profound glow and stood in front of her. Bai Mei was stunned for a moment. Yiqing Luo. When did she rush over? Do you think that I can't tell what your motive is? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Don't be silly, I've said this before. You're the one who asked for it. So you should bear the consequences. Bai Mei intentionally unleashed a terrifying and extreme cold attack. Just to attract her attention. And then she left quietly. She would rush to the ancestral hall. It was because Bai Mei had discovered the dim light on the cabinet in the ancestral hall. That was obviously what Bai Mei was looking for. How could she possibly let her guard down? At the moment when Bai Mei moved, a figure suddenly appeared. She immediately sensed Bai Mei's intention. Yiqing Luo's fingertips suddenly tightened as her lips curled into an arc, adding a tinge of treacherous coldness. Bai Mei, why don't you tell us what mission has the Palace of Seclusion arranged for you? Bai Mei's horrifying face contorted in pain. Bitch, let go of me. Ah! She suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. Yiqing Luo's hand which was clasping her arm suddenly increased her strength and only a kacha sound was heard as her bones were broken. Why can't you be obedient? Yiqing Luo smiled so much that her brows were filled with a sinister air. Prisoners shouldn't flaunt their momentary happiness. You might feel good with your mouth but your body will have to suffer. This time Bai Mei was very obedient. Gritting his teeth, he didn't dare to say another word. Yiqing Luo was still smiling. Have you thought it through? Do you want to answer my question? She paused as her vision shot towards Bai Mei's face. After all, this face of yours is rather scary. I'm afraid that I will have nightmares at night if I grab onto you like that. Bai Mei's vicious and venomous gaze suddenly stared at Yiqing Luo. But, at the next moment, she seemed to have thought of something. An indistinct cold glint flashed past her venomous eyes. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo to react, Bai Mei suddenly straightened her body as she pounced towards Yiqing Luo. That blackened flesh face was reflected in Yiqing Luo's pupils at a close distance. Hurry up and read the latest updates. Download address, cell phone reading. Chapter 4481. This action made Yiqing Luo stunned for a moment. No matter who it was. At the sight of such an ugly face sticking to his own. All of them would be shocked, right? It was Yiqing Luo's days that gave Bai Mei a chance. She speedily broke free from Yiqing Luo's restraint. Her hand swiftly pressed down on the faint light. Yiqing Luo wanted to stop her but it was too late. When Bai Mei's hand pressed on the faint light, that faint light which was so weak that it could not be seen suddenly burst forth with a dazzling light. The entire ancestral hall was lit up by this ray of faint light. Bai Mei grinned as she laughed maniacally at Yiqing Luo. Don't you dare to stop me. Yiqing Luo, wait for me to return, it will be your death date. The lady's maniacal laughter was filled with complacency. As though she was ridiculing Yiqing Luo, as though she had no way to deal with her. That dazzling light made Yiqing Luo unable to get near. Her intuition told her that an ominous premonition was surging in her heart towards this dazzling light. Her brows creased tightly as she stared at Bai Mei without blinking. As expected. The next moment, Bai Mei's maniacal laughter suddenly stopped. Immediately after, she let out a miserable shriek. His face, which was covered in blood and flesh, was extremely obvious under the resplendent light. It was twisting continuously. The flesh was wriggling. It was sinister and terrifying as though it was suffering from extreme pain. She looked at Yiqing Luo pleadingly. Save me? Save me. Yiqing Luo didn't move. Bai Mei struggled even more frantically as she tried to remove her hand from the cabinet. But the resplendent faint light was like a huge suction cup, firmly sucking her in. It was like a wide open bloody mouth. As though it was going to swallow her whole. Apparently Bai Mei had also realized this. That strong suction force and the intense pain from the light penetrating her body. Something was obviously wrong. This was totally different from what the palace lord had said. He had obviously said that as long as she found the secret hidden in the Gu residence's ancestral hall, she would be able to find out the Bone Lord's secret through that secret. Secluded palace. Would give her an even stronger power. Powerful enough to let her humiliate Yiqing Luo. Why, did this strange profound light in the ancestral hall of the Bone Estate have a feeling that it wanted to treat her as a sacrifice? Bai Mei was terrified and uneasy. His body continued to struggle and tremble. Yiqing Luo, save me. If the sovereign knows that you watched me die, he won't forgive you. He won't forgive you. Bai Mei screamed at Yiqing Luo in a heart-wrenching manner. As long as Yiqing Luo lent a hand, she pushed Yiqing Luo into this dim light. Let Yiqing Luo become the sacrificial offering. But, no matter how she howled at the top of her lungs, pulling at Diamo Xian and Baisu, even so, the girl's expression didn't change in the slightest. Yiqing Luo stood quietly by the side with her arms crossed over her chest. Her beautiful face was calm and indifferent. The corner of her lips curled up, and the sarcasm in her eyes was obvious. Dim light filled the entire ancestral hall. Ah! Bai Mei let out a blood-curdling scream. A dazzling light suddenly flashed. Yiqing Luo only saw an extremely faint shadow in the light, slowly disappearing. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Bai Mei, suddenly, a painful cry was heard from outside the ancestral hall. The main door of the ancestral hall was opened. An illusory shadow swiftly floated in. The dim light that filled the sky and the gradually disappearing shadow were reflected in the eyes of the shadow. Chapter 4482. Bai Mei, that figure floated in midair as it trembled slightly. Immediately after, it flew towards the dim light. Yiqing Luo swung her glower flame fan in time and drew out a profound wave, blocking her path. And it was in this instance. The figure in the resplendent dim light was completely swallowed and disappeared. Bam! A deafening explosion was heard from outside the ancestral hall. The majestic profound wave was unscrupulously colliding in the air. Who is it? Dare to barge into the Gu residence? Looking for death. Men, stop her. Outside the ancestral hall, a commotion was heard. Yiqing Luo could obviously feel the thick profound yin qi filling the entire space. It was the people from the Palace of Darkness. They actually dared to barge into the Gu residence at this juncture? Weren't they afraid that the various powerhouses surrounding the Gu residence would shift their target to the Palace of Darkness? Yiqing Luo looked at Baisu, who was sprawled on the ground as her figure was faintly discernible, as though she was about to be blown away by the wind. She frowned. Bai Mei is already dead. No matter how sad you are, it's no use. If you want to keep your soul, then go somewhere else to be sad. Baisu tilted her head slightly. The gaze which she shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with a sliver of disapproving coldness. But it was only for a moment. And it was replaced by pain. That smear of coldness, Yiqing Luo took it all in. But she didn't have too many emotions towards this. She only calmly stated the truth. I just don't want Xian to be sad, so I reminded you. Whether you want to go somewhere else to be sad is your own business. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she didn't bother about Yiqing Luo anymore. Instead, she turned around and looked at the entrance of the ancestral hall. Outside the door, there were about 20 black-robed Palace of Darkness disciples, fighting with the Gu residence's guards. A tall figure speedily rushed in. That person's eyes under the black robe looked deeply at Yiqing Luo. But he didn't have any interaction with her, as he walked directly towards the direction of the table. Yiqing Luo's feet moved, and in a flash, she stood in front of that person as she stretched out her hand to stop him. Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. You should understand the logic of first come first served, right? Don't get involved in the matters of the Bone Palace. The Palace Master of Netherworld Palace stopped in her tracks. Her voice, which had been changed by profound energy, was exceptionally hoarse. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. What a pity, I'm after all the eldest young miss of the Gu residence and I'm already deeply involved in it. Listen to me. This has nothing to do with you. I don't want to hurt you. The Palace Master's tone was a bit depressed. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards. What are the people behind the Secluded Darkness Palace searching for in the Gu residence? If I'm satisfied with your answer, I might consider giving way. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace fell silent. Under the black robe, the pair of dark eyes faintly flashed a trace of coldness. Yiqing Luo acutely sensed the change in the other party's emotions. He raised his eyebrows curiously. I haven't seen him for a while. It seemed like something had changed in him. Don't force me. The Palace Master of Netherworld Palace's tone had also sunk. It looked like the person behind the scenes in the Secluded Darkness Palace had sensed him and had repeatedly sent the message to her. Or perhaps he had helped her several times, which infuriated the person behind the scenes. This was also good. They were originally not on the same line. If she owed too many favors, by then when she stood on the battlefield, she would be too embarrassed to go all out. The smile on Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a gorgeous arc. She took a step to the side as she opened up a path. Following that, she tilted her head as she smiled and said, "All right, on account that you've helped me before, I shall not stop you." Chapter 4483. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace looked at her suspiciously for a while, as though he was suspecting what tricks she was up to. "What secrets does the Gu residence have? I don't even know about it. This is all your palace is doing." Yiqing Luo spread out her hands. "I who know nothing, what tricks can I play?" The palace lord remained silent for a moment as he walked towards the table. After 2 steps, he turned back to look at Yiqing Luo. Seeing Yiqing Luo's arms crossed, smiling at him, he indeed had no intention to stop her. The brows under the black robe frowned slightly. He didn't hesitate any further as he turned and walked towards the table. The dazzling glow was still flickering. Each and every one of the spirit tablets under that glow seemed to be plated with a layer of yin qi. When he walked over, that dazzling glow didn't engulf him like how it engulfed Bai Mei. It looked like Bai Mei was really a sacrificial offering that the palace lord pushed out. After offering the sacrificial offering, the hidden secret door under the Gu residence's ancestral hall was opened. When the palace lord walked to the place where the glow was, he suddenly stopped as he looked sideways at Yiqing Luo. He stared at Yiqing Luo for a long time. Following that, he spoke in a gloomy voice, "Yiqing Luo, I really don't wish to hurt you, so don't get involved in any matters of the Gu residence." Saying that, his palm pressed on the place where the glow was. Following that, his figure suddenly disappeared before Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Something that the palace lord needed. Of course she was interested. Only allowed the palace lord to be wary of her things time and time again. Couldn't she snatch the palace lord's things instead? Yiqing Luo started walking towards the place where the glow was. "Yiqing Luo?" Bai Su's ethereal voice was heard from behind. Yiqing Luo stopped and looked at Bai Su. Bai Su slowly straightened up. That beautiful face was haggard and in pain. "She really?" "Right." Yiqing Luo replied without hesitation. "She's dead, dead in front of us." It wasn't because she was cruel. But because of this, Bai Su had to accept the reality. Actually, it was good that Bai Mei died like this. At least she deserved it. There was no one to blame. She did not feel sorry for Bai Su. There was no need to make things difficult for Dmo Xian just because of the relationship between Bai Su and Dmo Xian. "You can save her." Bai Su's voice was hoarse and low. It was so fleeting that if Yiqing Luo didn't listen carefully, she might not be able to hear this sentence. It could be seen that Bai Su was at a loss when she said that. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as the expression on her face turned solemn. "Yes, I can save her, but why should I save her?" Bai Su didn't know how to answer Yiqing Luo's question. Yiqing Luo continued, "You know very well that I wish for her to die. Because of Xian, I will not kill her, but I will not save her either." Although he knew that Yiqing Luo's words were reasonable. However, Bai Su's body still trembled uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo's expression remained calm. "Moreover, you know very well what kind of person your sister is. If I really save her, then the person who died now would be me." How could she not tell that when Bai Mei asked for help, her eyes were filled with schemes and viciousness? When Bai Su heard that, she suddenly raised her head. She opened her mouth to refute. But when the words reached her mouth, there was no way to refute. Chapter 4484. That was right. If Yiqing Luo were to strike, Bai Mei would definitely drag Yiqing Luo to death together. The reason why Bai Mei was able to survive till now was not because of her infatuation with Dmo Xian. Instead, her hatred towards Yiqing Luo. But even if he knew this, he watched as Bai Mei disappeared from his sight. Bai Su still could not calm down. If it wasn't Yiqing Luo's fault, she really wasn't able to be so carefree. "I don't care what you think." Yiqing Luo's expression was very indifferent, without much emotion. "If you feel that hating me can erase the guilt in your heart, then go ahead and hate me." After that, Yiqing Luo didn't care about Bai Su's expression and walked straight towards the dim light. Bai Su's soul sense shook a few times and she wanted to catch up. But in the end he still stopped where he was. He watched as the girl's figure disappeared in the dim light. She squeezed her eyes shut. His heart was beating wildly, unable to find a place to settle down. Her mind was in a mess. It was like a tangled mess. He was unable to sort out his thoughts. Yiqing Luo's words were like a curse as it kept replaying in his mind. She was unable to refute any of Yiqing Luo's words. While he was in a trance, Bai Su did not notice that a wisp of black aura was slowly approaching her. In an instant, it fused with her soul consciousness. Baisu only felt that the suffocation in her heart was even more intense. It was as if something was oppressing her emotions. Baisu. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind her. A man's magnificent figure appeared in front of her. Only then did Baisu come to her senses. She raised her head in a daze and met the man's obsidian eyes. She couldn't help but shiver. Di-Zun, where's little Luo? Diamo Xian's brows creased tightly as he surveyed the surroundings. In the air there was the scent of Lil Luo air. There was also the residual power of her Xian wave. Baisu was about to say something. Suddenly a voice rang out in his mind. She's dead. She died in front of us. Yes, I can save her, but why should I? You know very well that I want her dead. You know very well that I want her dead. You know very well that I want her dead. The girl's extremely cold voice made Baisu's soul sense tremble uncontrollably. Diamo Xian furrowed his brows and handed over the jade pendant he used to nurture his spirit consciousness. Baisu, what's wrong? I'm fine. Baisu snapped out of her trance and took the jade pendant. Following that, his eyelids drooped slightly as his voice drifted and couldn't be heard clearly. I rushed over to chase after Bai Mei. I didn't see Yiqing Luo. Diamo Xian's expression congealed as he scanned the surroundings suspiciously. He seemed to be confirming something. Until his eyes were about to look in the direction of the table. Baisu suddenly said anxiously, Ah, yes, just now I saw the palace master of the Palace of Darkness. He was outside and I followed him to this ancestral hall. But when I arrived he was gone. Palace master of the Netherworld Palace? Diamo Xian's brows creased even more tightly. Everyone could see that. That palace master on the surface had feelings for Yiqing Luo. Let's look around. You've set up an enchantment here, so they must still be in the Gu residence. Baisu suggested. Diamo Xian took a look at Baisu. In the end he followed Baisu out of the ancestral hall. I'm still writing. Don't mess with my babies, let's read it tomorrow morning. Mwah. End of this chapter. Chapter 4485. After leaving, Diamo Xian couldn't help but turn his head back and swept a glance at the ancestral hall. He somehow felt that there was Lil Luo'er's presence here. Could it be an illusion? But when he turned back, Diamo Xian didn't discover it. When he walked out of the ancestral hall, his spirit consciousness lowered its head slightly. A wisp of extremely faint black energy was slowly dispersing in his eyes. On the other side, under the flickering light, Yiqing Luo closed her eyes from the piercing. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer in the ancestral hall. The bustling noises beside her made her dig her ears uncontrollably. What entered her eyes was an extremely bustling street. The surroundings were filled with hawkers and commoners. People came and went, flourishing and prosperous. What place was this? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she looked around in a daze. What? Did she feel that this place was a little familiar? It seemed like she had seen it somewhere before. But it seemed different. Coincidentally, a commoner walked past her. Yiqing Luo pulled him back. May I know where this place is? That person looked at Yiqing Luo strangely, but when his gaze met Yiqing Luo's devastatingly beautiful face, his face flushed red. Miss, this is the West Continent's Three Springs city. Yiqing Luo? Miss, are you an outsider? I am from Three Springs City. If Miss wants to know what is happening in Three Springs City, I can help you. That person looked at Yiqing Luo in a daze. Yiqing Luo swallowed a mouthful of saliva as she stared at that person and said word by word, Say it again, where is this place? West Continent. Three Springs City. That person was shocked by Yiqing Luo as he replied in a taut voice. This time Yiqing Luo was completely dumbfounded. No wonder she felt that this place was familiar. Wasn't this the West Continent's Three Springs City? But this place was very different from the Three Springs City in her memory. Many of the houses and buildings were different from the geographical location in her memory. Could it be that it changed after she left Three Springs City? That's not right. If this was really Three Springs City, how was it possible that no one recognized her? No matter what, she had caused quite a lot of trouble in Three Springs City. How strange. The thing that the Palace of Gloomy Darkness had spent so much effort to find in the Ancestral Hall was a teleportation formation? A teleportation array that could send people back to the West Continent? Did Gloomy Palace have to go through so much trouble just for a teleportation formation? No, that's not right. Why would the teleportation formation of the Xilan continent be in the Ancestral Hall of the Gu residence? Things were definitely not that simple. Yiqing Luo felt that her brain wasn't enough as she pulled that person and asked, "Where is the location of Three Springs Sect now?" Since he was back in Three Springs City, he would go home to take a look. It had been a long time since she last saw Yi Fengyu and the others. Hearing Yiqing Luo's question, that person was stunned. What Three Springs Sect? In Three Springs City, there's no place called Three Springs Sect. Oh. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she was instantly stunned. She thanked that person and pulled a few more people over to ask the same question. None of them had any impression of the Three Springs Sect. Yiqing Luo realized that something was amiss. She hurriedly walked in the direction of the Three Springs Sect according to her memories. However, when he reached his destination, in front of him was not the Three Springs Sect's mansion as he remembered, but a barren mountain. The surroundings weren't the bustling streets in her memories, but an endless, barren land. Chapter 4486. This time Yiqing Luo was completely dumbfounded. Everything in front of her was both familiar and strange. What on earth was this situation? Just at this moment, Yiqing Luo acutely heard some sound and it was rapidly approaching this side. In the air there was a piercingly cold chill. Yiqing Luo subconsciously moved her body and hid herself in the lush trees. Very quickly she saw two figures as swift as lightning flying over. One person, dressed in a blazing red robe, stepped lightly on a branch facing the wind. A red veil covered her face, but it made her look like a fairy descending to earth, independent of the world. And floating in midair, facing the red-robed woman, was a man in a green robe. That man had a handsome face, but between his brows, there was a sinister air. Feng Gu, you really want to be with him? The woman's brows were exquisite, a pair of bewitching fox-like eyes slightly raised, revealing some sweetness. Yes. Agu, I love him. The man's body trembled slightly as his tone became tense. Love him? Do you know who he is? He doesn't love you at all. Agu. The woman seemed to be annoyed as her tone became more forceful. I am willing to share this matter with you, that is because I treat you as my friend. If you are unable to accept the feelings between him and me, then in future we will not meet again. Feng Gu, for a man who you have known for less than 3 months, you are going to give up our thousands of years of feelings? The man suddenly laughed lowly. His handsome face was filled with pain. The woman realized that her words had hurt the man and wanted to open her mouth to explain, but when the words came to her mouth she didn't know how to explain. In the end she could only sigh. Agu, I only hope to be able to get your blessing. It is impossible for me to bless you with other men. The man suddenly raised his head as his eyes stared fixedly at the woman. I don't believe that you don't know my feelings for you. The woman's eyes seeped out a trace of helplessness and guilt. She sighed softly, raised her hand and placed it on her belly. Agu, I've always regarded you as my best friend. I've told you long ago that it's impossible between us. I already have his flesh and blood here. These words were like a clap of thunder that struck the man's mind. His eyes stared at the woman's stomach in disbelief. He was unable to regain his senses for a long time. The woman lowered her eyes and looked at her stomach. Her eyes were filled with sweetness and gentleness. Agu, I want to get married before our child is born. The man was dumbstruck and did not reply. The woman continued, the wedding will be held in Three Springs City because he said that's where we met. Does he know who you are? It took the man a while to find his voice. At the mention of this, the woman's mood became slightly downcast. She slowly shook her head and said, he doesn't know, so this also proves that he isn't with me because of my identity. I will find a time to tell him about this. Ha! The man slowly closed his eyes, his body landing on the ground. He turned around, his handsome face filled with pain and forbearance. You are really cruel, from cruelly rejecting me to cruelly using such a method to force me to give up on you. Agu? The woman sighed, matters of the heart can't be forced. From a long time ago I told you I like you, but this has nothing to do with love. This book came from Chapter 4487. Yes, it's me, I'm too stubborn. The man gave a low laugh. Since this is your choice I will respect it, but your wedding I will not attend. Agu. The lady wanted to say something, but she was interrupted by the man. Feng Gu, don't be so cruel to me. The lady choked for a moment. The man turned around and left without hesitation. The wind brought the man's slightly cold words. If you wish for your wedding to proceed smoothly, don't expect me to appear. After the man left, the lady stood at the same spot for a while, staring at the direction where the man left for a long time. After some time she sighed faintly. She raised her hand and caressed her tummy, her red lips curled and her tone was filled with gentleness. Your godfather Agu will definitely meet the woman who belongs to him. One day he will understand my feelings today, the feelings of having you. She could tell. The lady truly loved that man. And she truly doted on the child in her tummy. After that, the lady also left. Yiqing Luo was still hiding in the lush branches for a while before she slowly came out. That lady dressed in a fiery red dress earlier, she looked a little familiar. She didn't know if it was an illusion. She felt as though she had seen her somewhere before. As for the other man, not to mention that face, she absolutely couldn't remember wrongly. Blood-bone barbaric king. That man's face was exactly the same as the head she saw on the blood-bone barbaric king's bones. The only difference was that the head's face was much older. One was around 40 years old. One was around 20 years old. This man with the blood-bone barbaric king's face looked at most in his early 20s. Nirvana Realm, West Continent, Three Springs City, blood-bone barbaric king? Yiqing Luo's mind strung together all these matters. Suddenly, an exaggerated thought surfaced in her mind. This place, could it be blood-bone barbaric king's memory? She entered this space from the blood-bone barbaric king's ancestral hall. That faint light was actually not some transportation array, but the entrance to the blood-bone barbaric king's memory, where she was now. It was all blood-bone barbaric king's memory. So, the real purpose of the Abyss Palace was to look for the barbaric blood-bone king's memory? Why was that? Forget it, even if she racked her brains she might not be able to understand. He could only continue to see if there was anything in the memories of the blood-bone barbaric king that would interest the Palace of Darkness. At this moment, Yiqing Luo only felt a deafening roar coming from the sky. The entire earth began to shake violently. Everything in front of him began to change dramatically. Soon it was completely covered by darkness. She didn't have time to react. Light returned to his eyes. The scene changed once again. At this moment she was standing on a blood-stained land. Corpses were strewn all over the ground, and the stench of blood filled her nose. This was a battlefield. Moreover, it was a vast battlefield. As far as the eye could see, it was a reign of terror. Even the air seemed to be dyed red. This kind of scene change made Yiqing Luo almost certain where she was. This was definitely not a normal space. Her gaze searched everywhere, trying to find the traces of the blood-bone barbaric king. As long as she found the blood-bone barbaric king, she would be able to find out what the plot of this scene was. This book came from Chapter 4488. She had just moved her feet. Her hand was suddenly grabbed by someone. A dignified voice sounded from behind. Who are you? Why are you here? Then the man pulled her over forcefully. Yiqing Luo turned her head back and saw a group of soldiers dressed in battle armor, filled with blood qi. The person who grabbed her arm should be a general. Yiqing Luo was stunned. Where did they pop out from? Why didn't she sense their approach? Bring her down for investigation. That general saw Yiqing Luo keeping quiet and impatiently threw her towards the group of soldiers behind him. A straight man totally without any protective feelings for the fairer sex. The soldiers supported Yiqing Luo and escorted her to the other side of the battlefield. Yiqing Luo hurriedly cried out, Wait, wait. She looked at that general. Where is this place? General Wei's solemn face revealed a suspicious expression. His gaze was as sharp as a torch as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. Young lady, there's no use in pretending to be crazy, accept the investigation obediently. Yiqing Luo. She really didn't know where this place was. The soldiers were about to drag her away again. Yiqing Luo could only ask directly, Do you know the blood-bone barbaric king? Where is he? Blood-bone barbaric king? The general murmured these 4 words softly as he raised his brows slightly. You're talking about that bone lord who refines blood bones and uses them to swallow the god's body? Right. It's Bone Lord. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up. So, the name Bone Lord wasn't given by him in the heaven realm. But his real name was Bone Lord. The general's expression turned extremely gloomy as his gaze sharpened. What's your relationship with Bone Lord? Yiqing Luo. The atmosphere seemed a little wrong. The general's expression was obviously not right. She mentioned the blood-bone barbaric king, which made them even more suspicious of her. But this also meant that these people were indeed related to the blood-bone barbaric king. This space was indeed the blood-bone barbaric king's memory. Just as Yiqing Luo was racking her brains to think of how to answer this question, Suddenly, the smoke of battle and a terrifying profound light soared into the sky. That burst of powerful pressure shook Yiqing Luo's heart tightly, as though it was being squeezed by something fiercely. Oh no! Bone Lord is starting to defy the heavens again. Go! Stop Bone Lord! General's expression sunk as he looked deeply at Yiqing Luo. Seeing Yiqing Luo's pained expression due to the surrounding profound rays, his frown deepened as he threw the man to one of the soldiers. Then he quickly led the rest of the soldiers towards the direction where the black rays had come from. The soldiers who were left behind held on to Yiqing Luo as they brought her towards the direction of the camp. On the way, Yiqing Luo started to worm information from the soldiers. The general was very shrewd, he could not be tricked. But with just a few sentences from the soldier, Yiqing Luo managed to get the information out of him. As it turned out, she was currently at the border of the God realm and the heaven realm. This was a war in the God world. The reason was, Bone Lord used his divine body as nourishment to extend his life and increase his strength. Using other God realms people's flesh and blood to strengthen his own actions had violated the balance of heaven way. Hence, the Emperor of the God Emperor sent his army to suppress it. These soldiers were all sent by the Emperor of the God Emperor to stop Bone Lord's evil deeds. Listening to the soldiers' words, Yiqing Luo inexplicably felt that the plot was somewhat familiar. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4489. Wait a minute. She remembered that when Ah Xian first met the Blood-Bone Barbaric King, he had mentioned this incident. The Blood-Bone Barbaric King had privately used the god's body as nourishment, causing chaos in the god realm. After that, the Emperor of God sent his army to suppress it, but they all became nourishment for the Blood-Bone Barbaric King and were completely annihilated. The incident that Ah Xian had mentioned at that time. Was it this incident now? These soldiers were about to be completely annihilated. After that, the Emperor of God personally joined the battle and annihilated the Blood-Bone Barbaric King? How did she end up in the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's memory? Outside the camp, the majestic and terrifying profound wave was about to destroy the heavens and earth. The battle situation was getting more and more urgent. The soldiers could tell that Yiqing Luo was a weak cultivator. On top of that, she had a beautiful face that could topple cities. She was born with an advantage. The soldiers couldn't bear to tie her up. They only reminded her to stay in the camp and not to run around, then closed the door and rushed to the battlefield. Yiqing Luo naturally wouldn't be so obedient. After the soldiers left, she operated the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade to protect her heart meridians and then quietly left the camp. She was now in the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's memory. The first thing to do was to find the Blood-Bone Barbaric King, to know the real core of this memory. The camp's back door was slightly further away from the battlefield. The remaining power of the profound wave didn't come over. Yiqing Luo didn't feel too much pressure, squeezing her heart. This battle was indeed extremely tragic. Where Yiqing Luo walked past, corpses were strewn all over the place. She was expressionless, totally unaffected by these bloody scenes. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, suddenly the ground trembled and countless fissures appeared. Hard bones protruded out from the cracks. The moment Yiqing Luo saw those bones, her body instinctively leaped up and borrowed the force to fly into the sky. Following that, she hurriedly summoned Qi. Luckily, although this was the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's memory space, but it didn't restrict her power. She immediately flipped over and sat on Qi's back. Qi hovered in midair. Yiqing Luo lowered her head to look below. Bone after bone emerged from the ground. They were so densely packed that they looked like a spider web. Wherever it went, it sucked the broken limbs and bones on the ground into its bones. The bones were like starving beasts, devouring the corpses on the ground in large mouthfuls. And, along with the bone devouring, the bloody bones gradually turned red. The joints were still stained with drops of blood. It was the blood bone of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. The barbaric Blood-Bone King absorbed all the corpses on the battlefield. The blood bones began to shrink back. Yiqing Luo rubbed Qi's big head and motioned it to follow. Soon, Qi followed the retreating blood bones and arrived outside a huge cave. The blood bones shrank back into the cave. Yiqing Luo leaped down from Qi's body and Qi turned into a palm-sized kitten and stood on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. A man and a beast quietly entered the cave. It was pitch black inside the cave. Yiqing Luo's night vision was not bad, she could barely see the things around her in the cave. In addition, there was the rustling sound of the bloody bones retracting and rubbing against the ground. Yiqing Luo also followed up. She didn't know how long they had walked. Yiqing Luo estimated that they should have reached the deepest part of the cave. That sound of the bloody bones rubbing against the ground stopped. Yiqing Luo immediately held her breath and concealed all her presence as she quietly moved forward. Chapter 4490. Indistinctly, she could hear a deep groan coming from the front, as though it was enduring a huge pain. In the quiet and spacious cave, an extremely soft echo was heard. Yiqing Luo's approach didn't attract the attention of the people inside. She was nearing the direction of the sound. The nearer she got, the more Yiqing Luo could feel the dense evil qi in the air. Until the front was no longer a winding passageway but a spacious cave. The densely packed bloody bones were attached to the steep stone walls like a spiderweb. Yiqing Luo didn't get any nearer. She had crossed hands with the blood-bone barbaric king previously, so she was very clear. Once she touched the blood bones, she would be discovered by the blood-bone barbaric king. She sized up the densely packed blood bones in front of her, searching for the blood-bone barbaric king's head. The muffled groans of pain continued to ring out. Yiqing Luo followed the sound. Very quickly, she saw the blood-bone barbaric king's head in the densely packed blood-bone web. The blood-bone barbaric king still looked so young. His handsome face was constantly contorted as he suffered great pain. The air was filled with the stench of blood. Yiqing Luo discovered. The blood bones which had appeared on the battlefield and absorbed the corpses on the battlefield, were making a cracking sound as they merged with the blood bones in the cave. Each of the blood bones were stained with sticky blood or flesh, intertwining and merging with each other. The entire space was filled with the cracking sound of bones colliding or breaking, which was extremely horrifying. And following this sound, the blood-bone barbaric king's groan and pain became even more intense. Nobody knew how much time had passed. Only then did that painful groan slowly stop. The blood-bone barbaric king's heavy panting sound was extremely clear. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. Bone 1. The blood-bone barbaric king panted heavily. Very quickly, a figure appeared out of thin air among the densely packed blood bones. "How is it?" Blood-bone barbaric king asked. Bone 1 cupped his fists. "It's done, everything is fine now." The blood-bone barbaric king heaved a sigh of relief as he slowly closed his eyes. His mood also relaxed a lot. Gu Yi pursed his lips tightly. His cold face was full of confusion. "Bone Lord, I have something to say." The barbaric blood-bone king did not open his eyes. "I know what you want to say. There's no need to say more." "I really don't understand why the Bone Lord had to use such a method," Bone 1 said stubbornly. "The Bone Lord clearly knows that she won't be grateful to you, and she doesn't know how much pain you've suffered because of her. You've placed yourself in opposition to her." "Shut up." The barbaric blood-bone king suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with rage. Gu Yi knelt down abruptly. This subordinate was just feeling injustice for Bone Lord. Everything Bone Lord did was for her, but she wanted to kill you. The blood-bone barbarian king's eyes were filled with coldness. Gu Yi knelt there fearlessly. "I really don't understand. The person who caused this situation is her. But now you have to commit murder for the sake of the evil creature she created?" Bang! Before Gu Yi could finish his words, he was thrown out by a piece of blood bone. Yiqing Luo hurriedly turned sideways and shrunk into the darkness. Very quickly, a petite figure scuttled out from the darkness. The lady helped Gu Yi up and said in a trembling voice, "Bone Lord, please calm down. I'll bring Gu Yi down now." End of this chapter. Chapter 4491. After the lady finished her words, she didn't help him down immediately. Silence for a moment. There was no response from the cave. The lady then hurriedly helped him up and left speedily. Perhaps the both of them were afraid that the blood-bone barbaric king would regret it and only wanted to leave. No one noticed Yiqing Luo, who was hiding in the dark not too far away. When they passed by Yiqing Luo could vaguely hear the lady's suppressed reprimand. "You know that Bone Lord loves her deeply, so why did you intentionally mention her in front of him? She doesn't appreciate it at all. Bone Lord's sacrifice is not worth it." Bone 1 felt heartache for his master's sacrifice. The lady continued, "But Bone Lord feels that it's worth it." The both of them were still talking about something. But after a distance, Yiqing Luo couldn't hear it clearly. But what Yiqing Luo could confirm was the she they spoke of should be the woman named Feng Gu, who was dressed in a fiery red robe. Listening to their conversation, it seemed like the blood-bone barbaric king made use of the god's body as nourishment. All for that lady named Feng Gu? In the previous memory, wasn't it their West Continent's Three Springs city? Fenggu was pregnant and about to get married to her beloved man? Why would she need the blood-bone barbaric king to use such a method to help her? Moreover, Fenggu apparently didn't know that the blood-bone barbaric king was using such a method to help her. But because of the blood-bone barbaric king's change, it created a barrier between them, standing on opposite sides. Yiqing Luo was thinking. Suddenly, a blood bone wrapped around her ankle. The icy cold sticky feeling instantly made Yiqing Luo's hair stand up. Her expression changed as she swiftly raised her head and looked at the cave. She saw a head, speedily following the blood bone on the rock wall, sliding towards her. Yiqing Luo wanted to evade it. But the icy cold blood bone beneath her feet was sucking her hard, making her unable to move at all. He could only look on helplessly as the head quickly rushed towards his face, the head gradually enlarged in her pupils. It was as if he wanted to take over her body. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered furiously as her body moved even more vigorously. Her fingertips held the glower flame fan and the rolling profound rays swiftly chopped downwards. Rumble. Suddenly the ground caved in. Yiqing Luo only felt an earthquake. There seemed to be something distorting the entire space. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo was in the distorted space and her vision turned blurry as it sunk into darkness. After what seemed like several breaths of time, Yiqing Luo abruptly opened her eyes. The feeling of being bound disappeared just like that. At this moment she was standing on a battlefield littered with corpses. The thick stench of blood and the surrounding Shen ripples were like monstrous waves, constantly surging. Yiqing Luo glanced around. He looked at his hands and feet again. Did this change the scene again? Was it just an illusion that the barbaric Bloodbone King had discovered her existence? Yiqing Luo's complexion turned slightly pale. Fenggu, are we really going to end up like this? A voice came from not far away. It was the barbaric Bloodbone King. When Yiqing Luo heard his voice, she recalled the feeling of being entangled to her ankles by the blood bone in the cave earlier. She shuddered, listening to the direction of the voice. The distance between her and the barbaric Bloodbone King wasn't too far. Cautiously, she moved her feet towards the direction of the sound. Update complete moi. End of this chapter. The fastest update speed. Hurry up and read it. Download address. Mobile phone reading. Chapter 4492. Indeed, after a few steps, just at the edge of the cliff, she saw two figures suspended in mid-air. Fenggu and Bloodbone Barbaric King. The surrounding profound waves surged like a surging huge wave. The sky was covered by an inky black profound energy, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become extremely oppressive. The atmosphere between the two was no longer as gentle as the first time Yiqing Luo saw it. But it was encircled by a layer of thick, austere aura. When the two of them looked at each other, there was an eerie chill. Agu, you're my most important friend. The lady's voice was filled with pain, her fingers which were holding onto the long sword turned white. Why? Why do we have to come to such a stage? I'm out on something today. I'll come back to write the script. I'll take a day off first, adding on to the 3 chapters 10 previously and the 3 chapters 10 today, plus the 1 chapter 10, I owe a total of 8 chapters. I'll make up for it in 2 days' time, moi. They were above thousands of people. What kind of woman couldn't he get? Why should he pity this broken shoe? The scene was in chaos. Huangfu Zhangdong looked at the distance between him and Bai Mei, as he stared furiously at Huangfu Sheng. Immediately after, he called for the Huangfu family's forces, as they speedily pounced towards Bai Mei's direction. That impatient action made Huangfu Sheng's lips twitch in disdain. Ah Xing. Gu Zishi stretched out her arms as she hugged his waist, as she raised her head, as she gazed deeply at Huangfu Sheng's face. Her lips curled upwards as her smile was warm and gentle. I'll always be here. Huangfu Sheng's cold and stiff expression slowly softened. He gently caressed Gu Zishi's hair as their eyes met. The cold air which was emitting from his body also gradually stopped. This scene fell into the eyes of the crowd not far away. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she looked behind her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Your little cousin has a good life to meet a good lady, you don't need to worry. Who's worried about him? Xiao Jin snorted coldly. Yiqing Luo's gaze slid downwards as she looked at Yan Xiaoyi who was standing beside Xiao Jin. Her gaze fell onto their interlocked fingers. Her lips curled into a gorgeous smile. You're also lucky to meet a good lady. They were talking and laughing. His gaze fell on their intertwined fingers. The corners of her lips curled up into a gorgeous smile. You're lucky to have met a good girl. They were talking and laughing. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt that the man beside her had some changes in his emotions. She glanced sideways at Diamo Xian. What's wrong? The man's expression was cold, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. The girl turned to look at him. The look in his eyes had become gentle and unique to her. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched his face as she repeated that sentence. Diamo Xian lifted his hand. His purple robe fluttered like flowing clouds, and a wisp of white shadow could be vaguely seen swaying. Before Yiqing Luo had the chance to ask, Diamo Xian's expression revealed some unkind intentions. Pursing his thin lips, he bent down slowly and kissed her lips. Then he headed in the direction of the chaotic crowd. That was the direction of Bai Mei from the Palace of Darkness. There weren't many people from the Palace of Darkness who came this time round. The surrounding large powerhouses had long gone crazy over the so-called secret of the Divine Emperor's tomb. How could the Palace of Darkness's disciples stop them? It could be said that Bai Mei had been abused so badly that it was unbearable to watch. She was almost on her last breath. And on her body, there was nothing related to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Chapter 4493. Feng Gu, since you've already chosen to capture me then, we're already enemies. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled evilly. He raised his hand and caressed his lips as if he wanted to continue. Feng Gu gripped her long sword tightly. Her pair of enchanting eyes overflowed with coldness. But because of the person in front of her, she forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart. As long as you give me a reasonable explanation, I will take responsibility for this matter. Feng Ji's voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. This was obviously her last concession. The blood-bone barbarian monarch's evil smile stiffened. His pitch-black eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Fleeting. He laughed. His laughter was loud, but it seemed to be concealing some kind of emotion in his heart. Take responsibility for me? Tell me, you were the one who killed those people? Or are you going to become the mastermind behind me? The blood-bone barbarian monarch laughed in a low voice. His laughter was full of mockery. Don't joke around. Who are you and who am I? Are you going to destroy your own future for me? He laughed and shook his head mockingly. No, impossible. The person you love is not me. You still have your child. How are you going to take responsibility for me? Under the man's mocking tone, the woman was actually unable to refute his words. She clenched her fists. You really don't want to tell me the real reason? How can I tell you without a reason? The blood-bone barbarian monarch snorted. Or do you want me to lie to you? The woman's delicate body suddenly tensed up. You mean, the rumors outside are all true? Is it really because you want to obtain eternal life and increase your own strength that you've cultivated a forbidden art, used divine bodies as nourishment, and refined the flesh and blood of other profound practitioners from the god realm into your own power? Every word she said. Her tone became tenser. In the end, her entire mood was tense. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled. His expression was very indifferent. It's true. Agu. The woman screamed hysterically, tears seeping out from the corners of her eyes. You promised me that when I succeeded the throne, I would make you the barbaric blood-bone king, and that you would accompany me to protect everything? She was really hurt. Moreover, he was thoroughly injured. She had never doubted Agu. Even if everyone was condemning Agu. But she firmly believed that everything Agu had done, he definitely had his own difficulties. However, Agu had personally shattered all of her beliefs. This was her brother who was as close as a brother to her. He was someone she had given her true feelings to and treated as her own brother. But he admitted all of this with his own mouth. The barbaric blood-bone king's eyes changed when he saw her tears. But Feng Gu, right now, I am also invincible barbaric blood-bone king. The barbaric blood-bone king chuckled. However, the woman's appearance in the past appeared before his eyes. She smiled brightly and looked at him. From now on, your title will be Barbaric Blood-bone King. Isn't it awesome? The scene of the past still seemed like it was yesterday. The barbaric blood-bone king closed his eyes tightly, took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. Then he maintained his evil smile and said word by word, if you want to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens, I'm afraid, you can't do it now. His gaze fell on the long sword in her hand. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, and there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. Chapter 4494. The chapter name is wrong but the content is correct. The past memory, Wait till the day when you can really lay your hands on me, then come and find me." Saying that, he turned around. The densely packed blood and bones quickly gathered and wrapped him up in layers. The crisp sound of bones echoed throughout the entire space. Following that, the figure of the barbaric Bloodbone King disappeared among the blood bones. The sky full of blood bones also merged into the air. The lady stood on the spot, staring blankly at the direction where the barbaric Bloodbone King disappeared. Her body seemed to have lost all support as it suddenly fell to the ground. The sharp crystal long sword also fell to the ground. She shut her eyes tightly, the expression on her face was an uncontrollable restlessness. Why did it become like this? Agu, why did he do that? I really don't want to get into this situation with him. The lady's murmur was very soft. But Yiqing Luo, who was lying on the cliff, heard it clearly, looking at the scene in front of her. Yiqing Luo roughly understood this memory. It was no wonder that the people in the Gu residence were not allowed to mention the words, Barbaric Bloodbone King. It turned out that Barbaric Bloodbone King was the title given to him by this lady named Feng Gu. In the end, the two of them became enemies. And because of this, Barbaric Bloodbone King did not want to mention these words again. She had to admit, there was actually a so-called friendship between men and women, at least for Feng Gu. She indeed sincerely treated the Barbaric Bloodbone King as her own friend and even a relative. Otherwise, she would not be in so much pain because of the Barbaric Bloodbone King's actions. In the previous memory, Yiqing Luo remembered that the Barbaric Bloodbone King absorbed the nourishment from the god's body. It seemed to be for Feng Gu. What the f*ck? Could it be a sadomasochistic relationship? He did it for her. She was totally unaware and had all sorts of misunderstandings. Then both of them went their separate ways. So sadistic. Yiqing Luo broke out in cold sweat for the both of them. He wondered if Feng Gu would regret her decision to choose the man she loved deeply after she found out about this. Yiqing Luo was thinking. Suddenly a figure appeared from not too far away. That person was tall and muscular. Not knowing if it was because they were too far apart, the light from this angle pierced her eyes. Yiqing Luo couldn't see that person's face clearly. The man approached Feng Gu. Yiqing Luo couldn't even see that person's face clearly. "Alright, don't be sad." It was a man's voice. It was gentle and extremely pleasant to listen to. "You're so sad. My heart aches." Huang. When the woman heard the man's voice, she threw herself into his arms. Yiqing Luo was puzzled. She could clearly see the woman's face, but he couldn't see the man's face clearly. However, judging from the woman's actions and tone, it was obvious that she wasn't lying. That man should be the person she had chosen to love deeply. This is his own choice. He can't blame anyone else. The man comforted her gently. "Don't let your imagination run wild. You're still pregnant." Feng Gu wrapped her arms around his waist tightly, as if she had found a safe place to rest. She closed her eyes in peace. "To me, he's like an older brother. I don't want him to go astray because of me. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life." "I know." The man lowered his head and kissed her hair. "He will understand your painstaking efforts. As long as he doesn't use the forbidden technique, the sovereign of God Emperor will not do anything to him." Huang. Feng Gu suddenly raised her head and looked at the man. Actually, the sovereign of God Emperor. Following Feng Ji's gaze upwards, Yiqing Luo was also trying her best to see the man's face clearly. Chapter 4495. The chapter name is wrong, but the content is correct. Past memory at this moment. That familiar earth quaking and mountain shaking, as well as the distortion of space, struck her once again. Yiqing Luo. Mother***her. What a coincidence. Every critical moment, it would shift to the next space. Was it intentional? Was it because he didn't want her to discover the most important part of this memory? It was simply poisonous. No matter how Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart. This distorted space once again made her lose her gravity, causing her to blink out. When she opened her eyes again, as expected, the scene had shifted again. Yiqing Luo expressed that she was used to it and remained calm. She looked around in a daze. Now she was in an extremely secluded mountain peak. In front of her was a stretch of luxuriant foliage, thick and extremely horrifying plants. And not far ahead there was a huge cave. Yiqing Luo walked over. But she didn't go near. Because the surroundings of the cave were rippling with dense profound waves. One circle after another like ripples spreading out. If she went near, she would suffer from this wave of energy attack. Luo took a look and casually found a big tree. She chose a place that could withstand her weight and could easily conceal her figure. She had already figured out the routine. Anyway, to the memory of this space. Even if she didn't move, what was supposed to happen would definitely happen. All she had to do was wait here. As expected. About 2 hours later, a rustling sound was heard from the dense forest. Luo shifted her body and looked towards the direction of the sound. She saw a lady dressed in a fiery red robe rushing towards the cave. The profound waves agitated her red dress, and the veil on her face was also blown lightly. His aura was extremely cold and solemn, as though it was going to destroy the heaven and earth. When the lady rushed to the cave, she raised the long sword in her hand and waved it towards the cave. The profound waves surged, shaking the space. Some of the surrounding plants were uprooted by the profound waves. The place where Luo was hiding was almost overturned. But, at this timely moment, kacha, a bloody bone slid out of the cave. Then countless bloody bones crawled out of the cave. When he realized that it was a woman, he felt a chill run down his spine. The blood bone shrank back abruptly. After a while, the blood-bone barbarian king walked out of the cave. Luo, who was in the dark, it seemed like the barbaric blood-bone king knew that his current form was extremely ugly. He didn't want to meet Fenggu in an ugly appearance. Luo's vision swept past Fenggu. He did not know what the timeline of these memories was like. Fengji's stomach had already flattened. This meant that the child in her stomach had already been born. Moreover, she had finished her confinement. How long had it been since the 3 memory segments had happened? Luo was really dumbfounded looking at this. Fenggu, the blood-bone barbaric king, looked at the woman's face greedily, his eyes filled with longing. Why are you here? How long do you want to hide? The woman opened her mouth, her voice was extremely cold. The blood-bone barbaric king lowered his eyes slightly as he sighed softly. I have no choice, you guys are chasing too closely. If I don't hide, then I can only absorb all of them to become my nourishment. If I do this, you will not be happy. The woman raised the long sword in her hand as she gave a cold laugh. Yes, I'm very unhappy, so I'm here on behalf of heaven. Chapter 4496. The blood-bone barbarian king was startled and looked at him in a daze. Suddenly he grinned and said, Is Fenggu ready to kill me? The woman's eyes were cold. She did not respond. With a leap, he swept away the boundless profound light and swung his sword. She attacked without holding back. The killing intent in the profound light was not fake. The barbaric blood-bone king was stunned by her murderous aura. His smiling face finally couldn't help but freeze. He frowned slightly and a puzzled expression floated in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he was stunned that he didn't dodge. Or was it because he didn't believe that Fenggu would kill him? The barbaric blood-bone king did not dodge. He did not retaliate either. The long sword pierced straight through the blood-bone barbarian king's body. From one end of his shoulder to the other end of his body. The sharp pain made the barbaric blood-bone king's face turn deathly pale. He looked at Fenggu in disbelief. His eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. Do you really think I can't bear to kill you? The woman's cold words were filled with coldness. Do you know that I've wanted to kill you since the moment a Huang appeared in my life? The blood-bone barbarian king was startled. The icy chill made him unable to think properly. The woman laughed mockingly. If a Huang hadn't told me that you were still useful, I would have killed you long ago. Don't you know that your self-righteous feelings for me not only annoys me but also disgusts me? The last 3 words. The woman deliberately looked at the barbaric blood-bone king's eyes and said word by word. Those 3 words. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the barbaric blood-bone king's mind. The piercing pain in his shoulder. It was not even half as big as his heart. Looking at the astonished and incredulous expression on the man's face, the mocking look on the woman's face became even more pronounced. As if she was ridiculing the man's ignorance, she sneered, Agu, everyone says that you're a smart person, but in my eyes you're as stupid as a pig. The woman laughed. Suddenly she moved her fingers. He pulled the sword out of the barbaric blood-bone king's shoulder. Blood splattered everywhere. The barbaric blood-bone king's body was also sent flying by the force of the sword. His body fell heavily to the ground. He groaned in pain. The sharp pain in his shoulder and the feeling of blood loss caused his mind to finally clear up. The woman raised her sword again and swung it at the barbaric blood-bone king. This time the barbaric blood-bone king reacted. He quickly rolled on the ground and dodged the woman's attack. His face was gloomy, the bone-chilling coldness was eroding his body and mind. Even though he saw the woman's extremely cold face with his own eyes, he still could not believe it. "Fenggu, what are you talking about?" The woman raised her voice and laughed loudly. Then she suddenly flew over. The sword in his hand had no intention of holding back at all. The piercingly cold sword wave swept up a dense killing intent. The barbaric blood-bone king naturally felt the murderous aura from the woman. He dodged awkwardly. However, one of them was ruthless and determined to kill him. One of them was filled with shock, yet he was unwilling to retaliate. There was no suspense at all in this war. In just a short while, the blood-bone barbarian king was once again struck by the sword, and was pressed against the steep rock wall by the woman. The woman forcefully stepped on him to the ground. Pointing the sword at the barbaric blood-bone king, she said, "You're useless now, you can die." Fenggu. There was no fear of death in the barbaric blood-bone king's eyes, but despair and pain towards the woman's coldness. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download URL. Chapter 4497. I'll tell you the truth. Actually, from the very beginning, I knew everything you did for me. Do you think that Huang approached me because of my identity? But, Agu, I love him. If he really wants my life, I'm willing to give it to him. The pupils of the barbaric blood-bone king contracted. The woman's words pierced his heart deeply. The woman looked at his pale face and smiled even more happily. Do you really think that I don't know that it's because of me, that you're bearing the infamy of the world? No, actually, I know everything. I know everything. Because of my identity, the child in my womb is born with an imperial mandate. It will inherit everything I have and even my identity. So, someone is secretly trying to take my life and my child's life while I'm pregnant and my power is unstable. In order to protect me, to protect my child, you cultivated a forbidden technique. Yes, everything the blood-bone barbarian king had done was for Fenggu, for the child in Fengji's belly. Even though he knew that Fenggu didn't love him and that the child in Fengji's belly was another man's child. But he still disregarded everything, even sacrificing himself just to protect Fenggu. Cultivating a forbidden technique. Using other divine bodies as nourishment. He had become a street rat and everyone wanted to beat him up. Furthermore, even she had to come forward to suppress him. He had to bear her misunderstanding, her confusion, and her disappointment. But she knew everything that had happened. She knew everything. But he accepted it as a matter of course. He even pretended not to know anything. Looking at him, he was like a clown, sacrificing everything for her. I'm very grateful to you, really? The woman smiled at him. However, his eyes were filled with coldness. Now that my child has been born, your final role now is to fulfill my reputation and die by my hand. She leaned down slightly. The foot that was stepping on the barbaric blood-bone king's chest increased in strength. Don't you love me very much? Now, everyone in the world is questioning whether the Divine Emperor's faction is unable to kill you because of our relationship. I protected you. If I kill you now, I'll definitely be able to clear my name. For me, so, die. The barbaric blood-bone king's face darkened. He could tell that the woman's words came from the bottom of her heart. He curled his lips into a sneer, and his eyes were filled with surging waves. Just as the woman's sword was about to descend, he made a move. He grabbed the woman's ankle. Gotcha. The woman's bare leg was broken. The woman cried out in pain. The barbaric blood-bone king seized the opportunity to flip over and roll down the cliff on the other side of the cave. The woman limped as she chased after him. He looked down at the bottomless abyss. The gravel rolled around his feet, but he couldn't even hear the sound of the gravel hitting the ground. The woman stared at the bottom of the cliff for a long time. She sheathed her sword and snorted coldly. Ah, you sure know how to choose. You know that death won't be that painful. After saying that, the woman left the scene. Until the woman's figure and aura completely disappeared. Yiqing Luo then emerged from the darkness. She frowned as she stared at the direction where the woman left for a long time, and couldn't help but frown. Why did she feel that something was wrong? Chapter 4498. That woman called Fenggu. It shouldn't be like this. Even though she had only met Fenggu twice, she could also conclude that Fenggu was definitely not such a person. The Fenggu that he had seen in the previous memory. She was 100% sure. Feng Gu genuinely regarded the barbaric blood-bone king as his own brother, or even his family. The look in her eyes could not be faked. But this memory, Feng Ji's image had completely collapsed. She looked at the barbaric blood-bone king with a cold and emotionless gaze. It was as if all the feelings in the past were fake. There was a voice in Yiqing Luo's heart that kept telling her, Feng Gu was definitely not such a person. All of this must be a misunderstanding. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and retracted her vision. She summoned Qiqi and hopped onto its back. He asked Qiqi to jump off the cliff with her to look for the blood-bone barbaric king. The cliff was extremely high, and falling down would basically result in one's body being smashed to pieces. There probably wouldn't even be any scraps of flesh left. However, the blood-bone barbarian king was definitely not dead. If she had died, she would not have met the blood-bone barbarian king and would not have been brought to the heaven realm by him. The blood-bone barbarian king must have activated the male protagonist's halo when he fell. Riding on Qiqi, he searched all over the place. Another wave came. The earth quaked, the mountains shook, and space distorted. Yiqing Luo, it was time to switch spaces and switch memories again. By the time the darkness in front of her dispersed, Yiqing Luo regained her clarity. Everything in front of him, nothing had changed. It was still below the cliff. She was still on Qiqi's back. Yiqing Luo? What was going on? What happened just now? Wasn't the memory going to change? Why was there still no change? Is the program faulty? Yiqing Luo had a dazed look on her face as she rode on Qiqi and continued to look around the cliff to see if there were any caves halfway up the mountain or places within the tree branches. After searching for at least 2 hours, Yiqing Luo still hadn't found any traces of the blood-bone barbaric king. Without a goal, there was no way to find it. After searching for such a long time, it was time for Qiqi to rest. Yiqing Luo found a place to land and kept Qiqi back into the pet space. Suddenly, he heard the sound of someone stepping on a withered branch. Yiqing Luo's eyes shone brightly as she speedily dodged to one side, staring intently at the direction where the sound came from. Based on experience, as long as someone appeared, they would definitely be able to bring her back to the main character of this memory. As expected. Very quickly, a blazing figure appeared in front of Yiqing Luo. It was Feng Gu. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Why was she here? Could it be? He also felt that the barbaric blood king wasn't dead, so he purposely ran down the cliff to stab it a few more times? No, that's not right. The look in the woman's eyes was different from before. The woman's footsteps were very hurried, and there was even a hint of panic. He quickly scanned his surroundings. The worry and nervousness in his eyes could not be concealed. The woman stopped at the place where Yiqing Luo was standing earlier. Her puzzled gaze surveyed the surroundings. Just now, I was obviously here and heard the commotion. I thought it was Agu. Why is there no one here? The woman paused, then raised her voice and called out, Agu, where are you? Agu. But the quiet surroundings didn't give her any response at all. The woman sighed softly, hope Agu is fine. Yiqing Luo almost jumped out of the cave entrance. Her eyes widened in shock. He looked at Feng Gu in disbelief. She would never mistake those 5 ornaments. Azure Water Divine Artifact, Azure Water 5-piece set. The ring and the bracelet were exactly the same as the one she was wearing. Why was the Azure Water 5-piece set on Feng Gu? She can still use these 5 divine artifacts? And it was obvious that Feng Ji's control over the god weapon was much more proficient than hers. She remembered, the vast water divine artifact was a divine artifact forged by the divine emperor. Could it be? The woman in front of her, named Feng Gu, was actually the divine emperor? This thought made Yiqing Luo totally stunned. Right from the start, she had been suspicious of Feng Ji's identity. But the memories changed too quickly, so she didn't go to investigate further. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4500. Now, when he strung all these things together, she was absolutely sure that Feng Gu was the emperor of divine emperors. Yiqing Luo stared blankly at the 5 vast water divine armaments. He stared blankly at the lady who was controlling the divine weapon with her eyes closed and injecting its power into the brute blood bone king's body. His heart suddenly beat faster. The emperor of divine emperors? It was possible that they were her relatives. From the moment he saw the murals, she knew that there was a connection between her and the emperor of the divine emperor. He was also guessing. What was the relationship between him and the divine emperor? When he saw the Emperor of the Divine Emperor himself, she had an intuition. She was definitely related to the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. This kind of feeling made her heart beat faster and her eyes sour. They were all deeply confirming one thing. The Emperor of the Divine Emperor was her family. No wonder. Ever since she first met Fenggu, she had felt an indescribable sense of familiarity from Fenggu. In the previous memory, everything that Fenggu had done to the blood-bone barbarian king, she had always felt that it was strange. He couldn't believe that Fenggu was such a person. It was an intuition that came from the depths of his soul. Yiqing Luo pursed her lower lips slightly as her eyes were fixated on Fengji's every move without blinking. Want to unveil her veil. She wanted to see what this family member who had a deep connection with her looked like. Under Fengji's control, the power of the divine weapon slowly seeped into the blood-bone barbarian king's body. Coupled with the assistance of elixirs, the external injuries of the blood-bone barbaric king were slowly recovering. In the next few days, Fenggu had been taking care of the blood-bone barbarian king in the cave. Every day he persisted in using the power of the divine weapon to repair the barbaric blood-bone king. And during this period of time, this memory did not jump to the next one. How long had Fenggu been taking care of him? Yiqing Luo squatted at the entrance of the cave for a long time. Fenggu didn't discover Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't appear to disturb Fenggu. It wasn't that she didn't want to appear. Instead, in this memory she was a non-existent person. If she appeared, this memory would be disrupted. She might not be able to find the true memories of the barbaric blood-bone king. This part, he had the memories of the divine emperor. She wanted to know the love and hate entanglement between the divine emperor and the blood-bone barbarian king. He wanted to know why the emperor of the divine emperor had passed away. He wanted to know just what exactly had happened within this. A few days passed. The injuries of the blood-bone barbarian king had long since healed. However, he never woke up. His handsome face was like that of a sleeping demon. Even though he was in a deep sleep, he still exuded boundless coldness. Fenggu did not know the reason, but he thought of many ways. But it was useless. Yiqing Luo could roughly guess why the barbaric blood-bone king hadn't woken up. He was afraid that he had locked himself in his own world, unable to walk out of that darkness. Because he could not accept the fact that Fenggu would kill him. He could not accept Fengji's cruelty to him. For the blood-bone barbarian king. If Fenggu had made her attitude clear from the beginning and asked the barbaric blood-bone king to sacrifice for her, she would not have believed it. The barbaric blood-bone king will not hesitate to satisfy all of her requests. However, from the blood-bone barbarian king's point of view, Fenggu was using him. Take advantage of his love. To achieve her goal. The barbaric blood-bone king was unwilling to wake up, unwilling to face this fact. This was a psychological problem. He could only let the barbaric blood-bone king walk out from the darkness himself. No one could help him. There's more at the back. I'm writing, baby will read it tomorrow morning, moi. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:01. On the morning of the fifth day, Fenggu kept the divine weapon and wore it again. Her gaze fell helplessly on blood-bone barbaric king as she muttered softly, "When are you going to wake up? If you don't wake up, I'm leaving." As she said that, she lifted her leg and gave blood-bone barbaric king a light kick. "I've been out looking for you for several days. Xuanhuan must be searching for my whereabouts. You're now a sinner in the god realm. I can't let Xuanhuan find you, bastard. Your injuries have obviously healed, but you still pretend to be asleep." The lady's soft voice sounded like a complaint. But Yiqing Luo could tell. That was mixed with deep concern and helplessness. That was only when facing a real old friend, a brother, she would have this tone and attitude. Fenggu really valued blood-bone barbaric king as a brother, a relative. Just as the lady was muttering beside blood-bone barbaric king, nagging about their past memories, the lady suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her entire body tensed up. The expression on her face also turned solemn and grave. A pair of enchanting eyes stared straight at the entrance of the cave. Oh no, those people have found their way here. Fenggu stood up abruptly. The blazing red dress was like a burning fire. Her aura was no longer as gentle as a little girl's, but rather, it was cold and sharp. She turned back and took a look at blood-bone barbaric king who was lying on the ground. Her slender brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. "I can't let them discover your existence. Agu, wait for me, I'll go lure those people away." After Fenggu finished her words, she quickly left the cave. Yiqing Luo shrank on the other side. and from afar she could see a huge wave of profound energy surging in the entire dense forest. Was it the God Emperor's men? They were here to look for Fenggu. Or did they know that blood-bone barbaric king wasn't dead and wanted to hunt him down? Feng Ji's figure speedily headed towards the direction of the profound energy. But a moment later, the Xin wave on the other side slowly stopped. After that, the dense forest resumed its original peace. It looked like Feng Ji's appearance should have dissuaded those cultivators. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and looked towards the cave again. This look, she nearly fell from her hiding place. Because it was unknown when the barbaric blood-bone king had woken up. He sat up straight, one hand on the back of his head, a puzzled expression on his handsome face. Yiqing Luo, she no longer wanted to complain about the direction of this memory. It was extremely melodramatic. Fenggu left. The barbaric blood-bone king woke up. Wasn't this clearly to escalate the misunderstanding between the two of them? Yiqing Luo could guess the following plot even with her toes. The barbaric blood-bone king thought that it was Fenggu who had injured him. However, he didn't know that he had been saved by Fenggu. Speaking from experience, Fenggu had just left, so it was unlikely that he would return. If he came back, wouldn't the misunderstanding between the two be resolved? That Fenggu from the previous plot. His ice-cold eyes and ruthless methods filled with killing intent didn't seem fake. But now it was Fenggu who had saved the blood-bone barbarian king, and his attitude was completely different from before. This was definitely a misunderstanding. However, based on the conversation between Xian and Yiqing Luo when she first met the barbaric blood-bone king, this misunderstanding probably hadn't been resolved even after the sovereign of God Emperor had passed away. Otherwise, when the barbaric blood-bone king heard the sovereign of God Emperor's name, he would reveal such a disgusted and complicated expression. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.